Wow, we got some great folks in this community, don't we? Thank you, prayer team. That was awesome. And thank you, in addition to our prayer team, to our two other board members, Tony and Caroline Dodona. Thank you all for sharing what it means to live a bold life. Everything from living from a place of vulnerability, authenticity, being present with our emotions. Let's see if I can recap. Not ruled by fear, living from courage, pursuing what sets us on fire, daring to dream, seeing the possibility, living authentically from the heart, even when we feel vulnerable and uncomfortable. Thank you all. And then Tony and Caroline putting on their cowboy hats and living a new level of their bold life. Oh my goodness. So yeah, lots I could say about our founding members and how this community just spontaneously evolved out of intention, out of bold prayers. It was a Living in Solution class where I announced that I did not get the job at a church here in Charlotte, and the class said, that's okay, we're going to start one. I mean, that was pretty much the synopsis of our day that day. It was all a class all about, that particular class was about bold prayers, and I asked them to share at the end, and Tony's, he wasn't expecting me to ask him to share, and he said, okay, that I helped Reverend Christie start a church. And then it just started one after the other, people saying, yeah, let's do this. And Lisa Lee Morgan, she didn't share this on her video, but she had called me months before that telling me, I know you don't know me, but I heard you speak once, and I'm building a home that's also going to be a retreat center of some sort. I don't know what kind of spiritual center, but I don't even think she said retreat center. She just said spiritual center. And she said, I know that you're supposed to lead it and do things there. And so speaking these bold intentions, and now by the end of this year, that house, that home called the Fifth House, which is dedicated to the quintessence, the God nature in all of us that we are filled with, that love and light. Anyway, it's going to be reality at the end of this year, and we're going to be able to have workshops and events there. She's opened that up to our community in advance. So whether it's buying a ranch in Montana, starting a church, building the Fifth House on Lake Norman, or whether it is taking a chance on a new relationship, whether it is taking a chance on a new business, whether it is speaking your truth even if your voice shakes, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, whether it is these things that feel so enormous or the things that feel small that sometimes, many times, are enormous in and of themselves, all of this is having a bold nature, creating from a bold place, living boldly. But you see, our living boldly is really loving boldly. That's at the root of everything. Our bold nature is rooted in our ability to open our hearts and let our soul shine, really. Our living boldly is tied to our loving boldly. It has to start there. It has to be a central part of our living. If we're going to live boldly, we have to love boldly. That moving outside of our comfort zones continually and living from an authentic, vulnerable place is so important. And it's never been more important for us to stay in our hearts. I was asked recently how to treat for a situation. Treatment is our word for affirmative prayer, so we often say treat. That means affirmative prayer. So I had someone ask recently, how do I treat for a situation to turn out, harmoniously, and for people to take my words in the way that they're intended, and for people to receive me with love? And we were talking about the other players in this scenario, and finally, I said, ultimately, it's about cultivating an inner environment of peace and love, period. It's not about hoping that they will receive you as peace and love, hoping that they're going to show up as peace and love, but rather cultivating an inner atmosphere of peace and love, period. So then I get an opportunity, anytime someone talks to us about anything, it's like a neon sign saying, you're going to do this work in a minute. So like the very next day, I had the opportunity to use those own words in my life because I was preparing for a conversation. And I felt myself revving up. I felt myself being prepared for what was potentially going to be a conflict. And I started thinking about what I would say. And I don't want it to be a conflict, so I should think about it this way so I'm heard that way. And I should think about saying this so that that's perceived. And I should think, and I'm thinking. And I hear myself say, stop thinking. Start feeling. Stop thinking about what you're going to say. Start feeling what you want to feel, and even more so, what you want to be felt from you. So we need to stop thinking about what we're going to say. So much of our time is spent having conversations in our heads that never even happen, or sometimes shouldn't happen. Stop thinking about what we're going to say and start feeling what we want to feel, and feel it into being. Feeling it into being. Feeling it into being. I feel like that's what happened 51 years ago this weekend. 51 years ago, I feel like that's what happened, that a feeling into being happened when people like Marsha P. Johnson and her dear friend Sylvia Rivera. Marsha P. Johnson was a Black transgender woman who was so instrumental in what happened at the Stonewall Inn on June the 29th, 1969. June the 28th, 1969. 51 years ago today. And so instrumental in what happened. And I think it's because, she kept, back then, you couldn't go anywhere as who you were. If you were a transgender woman, especially a transgender woman of color, forget about it. But even the LGB folks, it was hard to be in anywhere and have your human dignity honored. It was hard to be anywhere and feel free. I mean, flash forward to my 20s, which was, quite a few years later. I know what that feels like, to have been in a situation where you could only feel that freedom and feel like you were honored for really who you are, your human dignity honored when you were around your close-knit group of friends who were like you, and sometimes that was in a bar, because you wanted to feel that. So imagine Marsha P. Johnson, which, by the way, she used to say that the P stands for pay it no mind, because people would try to run her down and she would just say, I pay it no mind. So imagine that you're Marsha P. Johnson, that you're her dear friend Sylvia Rivera, a Black transgender woman and a Latinx woman, and they are being change agents. Because why? Because they got tired of going and into this place just to be themselves, only to be hauled off in a paddy wagon full of people, just lining them up and taking them downtown just for being who they were. So they would go in and they would feel free, and that freedom would expand. They were feeling into being. That freedom would expand. And then something else would happen, and it would be like a step back, but then that freedom would expand again until finally that expansion took over, and they were like, no more. You're not going to lock us up for being who we are. No, not going to happen. So we had a huge LGBTQ win, as you know, recently, the SCOTUS ruling, saying that, you know what, LGBTQ people can go to their office and be who they are and not worry about being fired. About time. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I was turned on to a lecture this week because of that. And thank you, Kate, for turning me on to. I love Andrew Harvey, and it was one of his lectures. And he was talking about how this win should cause us as the LGBTQ community to recognize, first of all, it's an amazing victory for human dignity. But he said, become inflamed with passion, with peace, with purpose, with focus, with meaning. And use that wisdom, use the meaning of this from your own personal journey for social justice for all and for the well-being of our planet. Use what we've learned for the well-being of all. Makes me think of Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of this beautiful teaching of the Science of Mind, who said we should swing from prayer to performance, right? We don't just stay in the lotus position, oming it out. Right? We swing from prayer to performance. He went on to say, from meditation to action, from contemplation to accomplishment. From contemplation to accomplishment. Or simply put, we treat and move our feet. Right? We get steeped in prayer and then we move into action. Steeped in prayer, meditation, and move into action. So that we can continue to be part of the solution for what's needed in our world, to live boldly by loving boldly, loving ourselves boldly enough to be who we are, loving our fellow beings enough to take action, to be in prayer and performance, meditation and action, contemplation and accomplishment. So first of all, let me back up and say, I'd like for you to congratulate yourself right now, because you're part of that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be tuning in here. You wouldn't be tuning in if there wasn't a piece of you in alignment with what I'm saying here today, in alignment with bringing the next best version of yourself and the next best version of this planet and the next best version of all beings into reality. If you weren't in alignment with that deep desire, you wouldn't be here right now. So thank you and congratulate yourselves for being on the cutting edge of what's possible and what's needed and what is happening right here and right now. So it's exciting time. It's an exciting time with lots of growth and change and people standing up that have never stood up before for the marginalized. It's a beautiful thing to witness. And also, there's a scary underbelly of that, right? It sometimes feels like it's getting worse. Sometimes it feels like our social, our political, our civil rights world, that it's getting worse. But sometimes things do get worse before they get better. I've been helping out with a friend this week who had a hip replacement. And, first day, she was like dancing around like, I got this, man, I got this. And then day 3 hit, and it was like, oh, wow, that was big. This is, wow, okay, this hurts, right? Sometimes, and one of the folks that we were checking in with said, don't worry, day 3 is rough, but it gets worse before it gets better. Well, the same is true if you're recovering from a surgery, you're recovering from an illness, you're recovering from a heartbreak, or you're recovering from the civil unrest that we are moving through right now. Sometimes it feels like it's getting worse before it gets better. There's so much to do. There's so much, right? There's so much to learn, so much to be, so much to act upon to be this change. But I'm going to tell you, the biggest job that we have, the biggest action that we can and need and must take is to cultivate the wisdom of our hearts and live from that place. To cultivate the wisdom of our hearts and live from that place, and to daily gather up all of the beings and all of the circumstances that we cast outside of our hearts. To daily cultivate the wisdom of our hearts, to daily gather up everyone and everything that we have pushed outside of our hearts, bring it back in. Pray for them. Pray for yourself. I forgive myself for seeing this person or that person as anything less than a child of the one, as anything less than a child of God. Pray for them. Pray for yourself. Pray for that part of you that wants to reinforce the idea that there is a them, right? Pray. Remember, we're one, we're one, we're one. We are connected. We are one. We are connected. We are one. When life feels like it's getting worse, remember that we are one. Remember that we're connected. And remember that if you want an arrow to move way far ahead of you, you have to pull it back. So when it feels like it's getting worse, and sometimes it will, sometimes it does, sometimes it feels that way, trust that you are in the arrow's motion of moving forward. But we can't soar ahead to where we need to be if we're holding anger in our hearts. And y'all, I'm telling you, I'm teaching myself this. I'm reminding myself what I know, really, every single day. I'm reminding myself what the Course in Miracles teaches, that everything is either an act of love or a cry for help. Everything. So every time you see someone just being, wow, really? That's the best you got for being a loving, kind, decent human being and honoring the dignity of other people? That's the best you could do? Ooh, take a breath. And remember that everything is an act of love or a cry for help. Or you could have also heard it say, everything is an act of love or a cry for love. So what if we looked at those people that were being less than kind, looked at those people that were being less than skilled human beings and said, wow, they are crying out for some love right now, when we move into a place of bringing them back into our heart, because our heart's big enough to handle it. Our heart is the wisdom of the divine. It is that power, that seat of power, living, loving, boldly. It means that we have to have the courage to meet today's news, today's unkind people, today's unskilled human beings. We have to have the courage to meet today with the consciousness of an open heart, with conscious awareness and an open heart, which is the consciousness of an open heart. And I said this before, I'll say it again. Now is the time to refuse to give our energy to anything that would divide or separate us. Now is the time to not give our energy to anything that would divide or separate us. I had another opportunity for that just the other day. I saw that this guy who proclaims to be a preacher of the Word of God had posted some really racist, hateful, nasty things on the Book of Faces. He had posted all this stuff, and he had posted the Abraham Lincoln bust that was burned in Chicago, and he had posted pictures of the Vietnam Memorial, the replica that's in LA being vandalized. He had posted these pictures. But these things happened in 2016 and 2017, y'all, and he was making it look as though they happened this past week and was connecting them to Black Lives Matter. Even went so far as to do a fundraiser for one of them. Wonder where that money went to. Anyway, and I found myself wanting to cast him outside of my heart. I found myself wanting to be angry, as if there's not enough going on. You want to make stuff up, really? Or not even, maybe he didn't make it up. Maybe he just was lazy and didn't fact check his information. But in any case, really? And so I had the opportunity to remember that now is the time to refuse to give my energy to anything that would separate or divide us. That doesn't mean that I sit back and go, oh, bless his heart. I'm going to pray for you. I did say bless his heart, and I did pray for him, but I also went onto his Facebook page and said, check your facts, man. This is not true. This was never tied to Black Lives Matter. And by the way, it happened in 2016, one of them, and in 2017, another. And by the way, everybody else that's listening to this guy, please don't follow blindly someone else's hate. Don't follow hate anyway, but especially not blindly, right? Pay attention. Wake up. Wake up. But I made myself stay. Took my fingers off the keyboard, delete, 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 a couple of times before I actually posted, because what was coming out was not love. What was coming out was, I was not happy, right? But we can be in this place. We can, that what I talked about last week, right? The alchemy of spirit. We can move that anger or that confusion or whatever into chaos and peace and love. We can move it. We can have that alchemy of spirit taking place within us. And so I sat until I got to that place. I sat until I got to that place because it's important. It's important that we keep cultivating the wisdom of our heart and moving from that place. With all of the racial inequities and injustices brought to light right now, I know it can feel worse than ever. I know. And with people doing and saying some really unkind things, it can be really hard to stay in that wisdom of the heart. But I encourage us all to remember that everything is an act of love or a cry for love. An act of love or a cry for love. And so we can be that love and be a voice for truth. They're not mutually exclusive. I'm not saying not speak up, because if you know me, you know I'm all about speaking up. But speak from a place that remembers that I am a conduit for the universe. Love flows through me. Love flows through me. I am the presence of love in action. I live my bold life by living my bold life that is a lovingly bold life. So I loved Linda's acronym for bold. I have one of my own. I'll share it with you. I had to bring myself a little cheat sheet so I'd remember, because I just made it up. But I like it. So bold, believing is the first one. Believing into seeing. I talked about that last week, so I'm bringing that back around because I want to drive it home. Seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing. So if I'm going to lovingly be bold and live my bold life and be a bold presence for truth and justice and all things good, if I'm going to do that, then I have to believe into seeing. And what I mean by that is to focus on the world that I want to see, feel it into action, believe that it is so, move with the assumption that it is happening, not get sidetracked, not get pulled down, because you know what? Right now can feel like a bottomless pit of negativity, and it can suck us down like quicksand if we let it. But we can choose to be faithful to the assumption that what is taking place is the unfoldment of good. I believe it into seeing it. So B, believing into seeing. O, obliterate separation. There's my word. I love obliterate. Blow it up. Obliterate the idea of separate. Obliterate the idea of us and them. And man, that's fun work, but it's truth. The one, the omnipresent presence, created out of itself everything that exists, and therefore everyone that exists, even when they hide it. So obliterate the idea of separation. And L, living from an open heart. Never more important than right now, to live from that open heart. D, decide consciously. Don't just follow what everyone else is saying, but and be on autopilot maybe from what you have always said to yourself, but decide consciously with each step what you're going to get behind, what you're going to put your voice to, your action to, your heart to. So believing is seeing, obliterate separation, live from an open heart, and decide consciously, and that's bold to me. You know, a flourishing life is the result of accepting a bold and true self-definition. Accepting a bold and true self-definition. The changes I wish to see in this world are coming about by accepting a bold and true self-definition. And this is it. This is my bold self-definition. I am a conduit through which the universe flows through. Nothing opposes the infinite, and therefore nothing opposes me. Nothing opposes the infinite, and therefore nothing opposes me. I'm strong, clear, awake, aware, impassioned, emboldened, standing strong. I am standing strong for a world where everyone has a life that's flourishing, where everyone's human dignity is honored. I know this conviction has to flow from an open heart. It can't get out otherwise. It comes from the infinite, but it has no outlet unless it's coming through my open heart. So I know that that's my activity, that's my action, to keep that open heart, that wisdom of the heart cultivated. And so I do the work to stay open and to shine, to stay open and to shine. And when I say shine, I mean shine the light of love that I am, and see it, and everyone else see it. It takes more than just me. It takes more than just you, though. It takes all of us. It takes all of us doing this bold work together. I have a ministerial colleague and friend, Reverend Kevin Ross, Rev Kev, at Unity of Sacramento. Shout out. Love you, buddy. My friend. And a few weeks ago, he was online and he was talking about a word that's a term that they use in Kenya, which is Harambee. Harambee. And Harambee is coming together, a pull together. It literally means a pull together. This is a time of creating a new world, a time of Harambee, a time of pulling together, and a time pulling together all of the beings, even the little kitty cat being that decided to be part of church service this morning. One more thought. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Well, here we are. A time that wants to divide us. We must pull together. We must do this by loving boldly. We must speak our word, do our work, but do it without casting others outside of our heart. Tapping into the love of these little four-legged beings. Let's do that. Know with me, I am a conduit for the universe. I am a conduit. I'm a conduit through which the universe flows through. Nothing opposes the infinite, and therefore nothing opposes me. Nothing opposes the infinite, and therefore nothing opposes me. Harambee. Nothing opposes us moving forward in love, moving forward together. And so it is.